Alrighty, good afternoon. It is Wednesday, July 30th. We are about to the end of July. Sometimes I think it's hard to believe that other times, like, well, look all that we've been through here, and July has been probably a more consistent summer-like month. June, we started out very wet. Heat levels were down. July, heat levels have been up. Rain chances very sporadic, and we've entered kind of a dry stretch here for parts of the state. So let's talk about our weather headlines here. Summer sizzle, that as is typical for July, August, it continues. But rain chances are on the rise. That's going to help douse the heat. We have a cool air damming setup. We'll explain that. And high temperatures are going to be in the 80s over the weekend. Something to look forward to if you're tired of the heat. Speaking of, here's a look at some heat index pixel queries. The highest Alabama number appears to be Montgomery at 106. Right across the state line in Starkville, 108. Shreveport at a busty 112. It's hot everywhere, though, folks. Here's a look at actual temperatures right now. A couple areas rain cooled, but otherwise in the sunshine, and we're well into the 90s. Regionally speaking, a look at the heat advisories in place where you see that magenta tone. That's an extreme heat warning. And those are not frequently issued, but when they are, they typically are indicating the potential for a heat index value to get above, say, 105, 107, as high as 110 to 112, and we saw that over parts of Louisiana. So again, not uncommon to have these in the summertime. I will say, though, that extreme heat warning, a bit out of the ordinary. So everywhere in Alabama is in that heat advisory, and it's going to last at least through today, and they may roll this into, I know they've already rolled it into Thursday for a few folks, because even though rain is going to be on the docket, the timing is going to be late enough to where we still are able to achieve those high heat levels before things cool down. So let's take a look at the radar. First thing you'll see there down along the coast is some pretty good sea breeze convection there along the Alabama-Florida line. We'll get to that. There's been one severe thunderstorm warning for parts of St. Clair, Etowah, and Blount counties. That meandering thunderstorm there that is currently in northern St. Clair County along I-59. And any of these that we have this afternoon that develop, thunderstorms that is, will have the potential to briefly become severe, meet severe criteria, or at least approach the potential. Why? Heat is like an energy source for these thunderstorms, and there's an abundance of that in place. As I just showed you on the map there, you got mid-90s almost statewide in a, uncontaminated atmosphere. And once we get rising air, once we pop through that cap, that stable layer in the atmosphere, and we get to that level of free convection where these clouds can just keep on building, there's no stopping the heights of these thunderstorms. So they get high cloud tops, you'll get pretty good updrafts, and then eventually when the storm bottoms out, you'll get small hail, you'll get gusty winds. So majority of these will stay below limits, but it is possible to have a couple strong thunderstorms, as was this one near Asheville and Steele. And this is kind of very slowly meandering to the south. Another thing to keep in mind here, our steering winds are not overly strong. When we talk steering winds, we're talking about winds in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, between 8 and 15, 20,000 feet. And those help to push thunderstorms along. Once they've formed, if we have a decent steering wind, it determines the direction in which they move and the speed at which they move. Wind speeds up there, pretty stagnant this time of year, and that could lead to a couple issues with certain areas getting hefty rain totals over a short period of time, while areas of 5, 10, 20 miles away getting no rain at all. So fickle summertime thunderstorms. There's a look at the Birmingham Metro, and points to the south. You look down towards Greensboro, Demopolis, a few thunderstorms there. And the spotty convection will likely continue to increase in coverage here over the next couple of hours. I think between 4 and 8 will be our highest coverage. Tennessee Valley's been quiet, but again, look at the loop that I have here. These are meandering is the best way to put it. Some of these will ride an outflow boundary, meaning that cool air that bottoms out when the storm kind of collapses. That cool air will be forced out in all directions, and then you'll get additional thunderstorm development off of that cool air outflow. So some of the strongest storms or most organized thunderstorms are down along the Gulf Coast, and these initiated by the sea breeze, that cooler air, it moves on shore, and eventually you'll get this clash, this convective motion and widespread thunderstorms across southern Alabama, southeast Alabama. That US 84 corridor is kind of the boundary right now from Dothan over to Andalusia. Right along and south of there is our best convection. We also have that spotty cluster of thunderstorms up near Lake Eufaula. And again, the biggest threat with these is going to be lightning occasional gusty winds, but anytime you get to the summer, you have that potential for wind gusts with these thunderstorms. So again, big picture here. See that big convective mass. We'll see how far north that can get throughout the day today, and then thunderstorms in northern Alabama kind of meandering about, but we will see rain chances on the rise the next couple of days. Here's Thursday. This is NDFD data, and what this looks at is essentially the potential of rain over a certain area throughout a 12-hour period. And we see those darker greens in north and central Alabama, again, favoring perhaps better rain chances for our central Alabama counties, maybe less or so for southeast Alabama, but that sea breeze front always an outlier. Friday looks like the best chance of good coverage all across the state, meaning we could see, at 50 to about 75% coverage. Again, I want to stress that not everyone's going to see rain. As good as the coverage may be, we're going to have a frontal boundary moving in, a rare late season, or I should say late season, where are we? A mid-season, midsummer front. They don't make it down here too often. When they do, they can be a good source of rain and thunderstorm activity. And then by Saturday, the focus of rain will be to the east of us in Alabama, including south central Georgia as that wedging scenario holds up. 7-day rain averages here. Highest, Sylacauga down to Auburn, Auburn over to Troy, and Andalusia over to Dothan, indicating about 2 inches plus. The rest of the state, anywhere between a ½ inch and about 1.5 inches of rain over the next 7 days. So I love the upper air look. Something, if you watch these maps a lot, you'll notice is you've got 2 features here. In fact, you'd call it 3. You've got that big ridge that's been centered over Texas is the source of our heat now. That regresses back to the Four Corners region, to the desert southwest. There's another weak ridge over the Gulf. You can kind of see that circulation there. There's really no wind direction, but you can see that clockwise rotation about a high. And then you have another high that I've kind of depicted on the map over the Atlantic. And the reason I put that there will become evident in a minute. But moving forward, that Gulf high, it's not as strong. It's not the strongest feature here. It's going to kind of phase out. By Saturday, though, ridge over the southern Rockies, but look at this long wave troughing we have across the eastern United States. And by long wave, I mean you look at the general and you kind of see this big dip, right? And maybe it'll become more evident here when I get into Sunday. We don't get too often these troughing scenarios, but we're going to be between 2 upper level highs. And in between there, you have a trough. So you got ridge, trough, ridge. And where we have that troughing is typically associated with a wetter weather pattern, but also, and more importantly for our forecast, cooler temperatures. And that is going to be the case as we roll into the weekend, specifically Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, but as early as Saturday. By Monday afternoon, again, we're sandwiched between these 2 features. You got the Bermuda high that's out there. Then you've got that upper high that's over the southern Rockies. And again, we're right in between there in that long wave troughing, and that is going to mean a break from the heat for us before perhaps that builds later in the week. And by Tuesday, that both highs look to increase in their strength and structure. You're talking about higher height values now beneath that high over the Texas Panhandle, and bigger, stronger height falls in between these 2. And you look where we are, we're still in that troughing scenario. So this will be a prolonged period where heat levels will ease before they jump back up late in the week. So I want to go to our futurecast. I'm not going to use any of the high resolution models. They're just not initiating very well with any of the convection. So this will kind of give a broad stroking idea of what we're going to see. So what is this? There's that rare midsummer cool front, we call it. This will be approaching by Thursday evening. This will add to, there'll be another lifting mechanism to help support afternoon thunderstorms. This will also bring about a cooler air mass. Sometimes calls this a backdoor cold front because it's going to be reinforced by some cooler Appalachian air. By Friday, this is at 6 o'clock. We've got pretty good coverage. Remember that map I showed you, the NDFD map, showed our best coverage on Friday, and that'll probably be the case. As this front pushes towards the Gulf Coast, the focus of the rain on Saturday will be to the south. However, with a setup like this, it's tricky. You're going to have fetch from the Atlantic side. You're going to have this moisture from the Atlantic moving across Georgia and into Alabama. Best bet of rain is going to be along into the east of I-65, I think, and back into Georgia, and then points to the south closer to that stalled frontal boundary. As we kind of evolve throughout the weekend, I think our rain chances gradually go down, but Saturday's probably going to be thrown in there with Friday as the highest rain coverage or our best rain coverage. And in there, too, is going to be just a cooler air mass as well. We go into Sunday, and the Europeans still kind of wet with respect to Alabama. I picked the wetter solution here with the idea that that's probably the maximum we'll see as far as rain coverage, and the idea that maybe our rain coverage will be lesser so once this wedge initiates. And again, the wedge set up by northeasterly winds coming from the Carolinas, the Appalachian Mountains, and it takes that cool air that's stationed there just south of the mountains and it pushes it further to the west into central, southern Alabama, sometimes as far to the west as Mississippi, depending on the strength. A lot of times you need a low pressure that's going to be off the coastline. That enhances that flow. Look at what that does. You see that counterclockwise rotation about that low. That takes that air that's over the Carolinas and helps feed it into Alabama. So with the wedge, you typically have more cloud cover, cooler temperatures, but also you can have more rainfall as well, and that's the tricky part about this and we'll have to watch moving forward. This is a look at the temperatures to go with it. Saturday's, I think, the day that we'll really start to see those heat levels ease. Again, we have the potential for mid-90s really through Friday. By Saturday, though, a lot of 80s across the state. In fact, on this particular timestamp, there's one 90-degree reading with this model data, and that's up in Huntsville. Let's go now to Sunday, and these are going to be a bit exaggerated because this is raw model, global model data, and so this is looking at, it's taking into consideration that we're going to have really good coverage of rain at this time. It will not be raining everywhere on Sunday at 2 o'clock. However, we will have a cooler air mass in place. We will have that cool air damming set up, and that's going to keep our temperatures in the 80s, I think, almost statewide, with the warmest temperatures probably in southwest Alabama. We go into Monday, and you can see there, 2 o'clock on Monday, that should be one of the hottest times of the day. We're talking about temperatures in the 80s. That gives us kind of a rough idea of what we're dealing with next week. And oh, by the way, overnight lows in Birmingham. I'll read them off to you. Last night, 76. This morning, 77. Monday, 76. We've been in the mid-70s to start out the day. We're looking at morning lows potentially in the upper 60s, at least north of I-20, to go into next week. So that might be something you early risers notice. All right, look at the tropics here, just dead quiet. Again, we're still a ways away from the peak of tropical season, though we tend to see a pretty exponential increase in tropical activity in August. We'll keep a close eye on it, but the NHC depicting no areas of concern. Of course, this map can change readily. We'll keep a close eye on it here as we move forward. How about some beach weather? Let's start Thursday. This is at 8 o'clock in the morning. Mind you, there's the potential for a moderate risk of rip currents depending on what beach you're at. It's tough to quantify every single beach here. It's a large area, but I look at the rip current risk data and I tend to favor the more cautious. Always check those flags before getting into the water. So again, sporadic sea breeze thunderstorms. They'll initiate probably around 10, 11 o'clock out over the Gulf, and then they'll move north and shouldn't be an issue, especially in the middle of the afternoon. But again, watch those flags. I think the highest rip current risk will probably be on Thursday. Into Friday we go, again with a southwesterly wind, a bit lighter so. Look for a lower risk of rip currents late in the week, but again, thunderstorms will be about, especially early in the day. Gradually into the afternoon, those move further onshore and become less of an issue. So if you're beach bound, as I will be in just a couple days, pretty typical beach setup for us. One last look at the composite radar, and again, we had that one severe thunderstorm warning, and look at there. I mean, up near Asheville and Steele, it just fizzled. You got another severe thunderstorm warning. It looks like it's down in Coffee County, perhaps, near Enterprise. And again, we will see these flare up from time to time. There's a lot of heat energy available, and that typically will bode well for some stronger thunderstorms. So that's a look at our forecast discussion here for this, what is today? Wednesday. It's right there on the map. Hope you guys have a great afternoon. See you tomorrow.